You're about to watch what we call an extended clip of the Young Turks, and the reality is it's somewhere in the middle. It's a little longer than our YouTube clips, but it's actually shorter than the whole 2-hour show, which you can get if you're a member. You can get it ad-free, and make sure you catch every news story we do that day. You're gonna love it as a full show. That's at tytnetwork.com/join. Thanks for watching. Well, the Young Turks, Jake Huger, Anna Kasparian with you guys. All right, interesting day on a number of fronts. One, obviously the jacket.
Yeah, that's breaking news. Everyone needs to comment on it right away.
No, from time to time I wear this jacket. I remember when I bought this jacket, it was really large on me.
Really?
It is not anymore. You didn't need to add the really?
No, I think it fits the same. I remember that jacket, the first day you wore that jacket vividly. Because it's just so different from anything you ever wear.
It is, it's fun. All right, for those of you who are listening on the radio or watching or hearing the audio podcast, which of course you could also get on tytnetwork.com/join. In fact, the whole 2-hour show there ad-free. Anyways, yes, it is a colorful blue jacket. Now, all kidding aside, I have two dramatic, surprising things in today's show. Where I might agree with Trump on two different things. Huh.
That's great.
First of all, interesting, okay. Second of all, there's two stories in here that will also produce rage, so we have that to look forward to. Okay, agreements with Trump and rage. Yep. Welcome to the Young Turks. Yes, well, no, the agreements with Trump are, of course, quite rare, but we'll get a little bit of that today.
Okay,
all right,
good.
Let's do it, Casper.
All right. Nikki Haley and Larry Kudlow are in the middle of a catfight. There's a lot of drama. It's like a soap opera, but in government. And it has everything to do with sanctions against Russia. Now, earlier this week, there was a lot of talk about the Trump administration finally imposing and enforcing sanctions against Russia because of their involvement in this whole mess in Syria. And so people who think that all of these Russia investigations are much to do about nothing, were like, see, he's going to do these sanctions. See, what do you have to say about that now? Turns out, no, he is not planning on enforcing these sanctions. And he didn't even communicate that with Nikki Haley, who is the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Now, it all started when Nikki Haley went on television and said this.
Are there any consequences for Assad's patrons, Russia and Iran, who continue to protect him?
Absolutely. So you will see that Russian sanctions will be coming down. Secretary Mnuchin will be announcing those on Monday if he hasn't already. And they will go directly to any sort of companies that were dealing with equipment related to Assad and chemical weapons use. And so I think everyone is going to feel it at this point. I think everyone knows that we sent a strong message, and our hope is that they listen to it.
Wrong. That is not what's going to happen. I mean, no one communicated with her that that's not what's going to happen. But Larry Kudlow, who is Trump's economic advisor, responded to what Nikki Haley had to say on television, and here is what his response was.
Ahead of the curve, she's done a great job. She's a very effective ambassador. There might have been some momentary confusion about that. But if you talk to Steve Mnuchin at Treasury and so forth, he will tell you the same thing. They're in charge of this. We have had sanctions. Additional sanctions are under consideration.
So Haley gets super salty about those comments and responds back with, quote, "With all due respect, I do not get confused."
Wow. Okay, good for her. Never gets confused. Sometimes I get confused on the road. Which road should
confusion is a normal part of life, but it's okay. I like that response. It was strong.
It was strong. That's about the only thing I like about Nikki Haley. Agreed. All right, so I am going to break this down into three parts. One is the drama, or drums, as we like to call it. There's the short-term drama of this catfight back and forth. There's the long-term drama of Nikki Haley maybe coming from behind with a 2x4 against Donald Trump.
Okay, let's
get to that.
Yeah,
we'll get to it.
Don't get ahead of yourself.
Okay. Okay. But the second part is the instability of the Trump administration and the messages we're sending to the world. And the third part is policy, where I am more on Donald Trump's side than I am on Nikki Haley's side. Whoa, what is this? First, I have to note my amusement at her going on TV and saying, "We are sending a strong message to Russia." turns out, no, we're sending a really, really weak message to Russia, which is okay, because again, I don't need to antagonize Russia more, but I would have skipped the flip-flopping part, because that really seems fairly pathetic. And then she said, this is going to show that we meant business. No, since you said it and had to take it back, it actually shows the exact opposite. We do not mean business. And finally she said that Russia will be feeling the pain. No, it turns out you're feeling the pain, not Russia. And so that gets to point number one, which is Donald Trump apparently watching this on TV grew very angry and started yelling at the TV and then anyone else who was nearby. That's according to New York Times reporting, and they have sources inside the White House. So, clown of all clowns, do you want to figure out what your policy is and effectively communicate that to all the people in your administration, especially before they go on TV? So on the issue of whose fault is the miscommunication, that is extremely clear. Of course, Donald Trump's fault. Nikki Haley is a professional. And in this issue, I agree with you, Anna, that she was not confused. It was Trump who was confused, as usual. But it's a larger issue than that, because there's a lot of people inside the Trump administration who want to push a much more aggressive stance towards Russia. And they keep pushing and pushing and pushing in that direction. So every once in a while, Nikki Haley or someone else will go out and go, we're going to show Russia. And then Trump's like, hey, you idiots, did you not get the memo that I'm compromised? I don't want to do something strong against Russia.
Yeah.
I owe them, or whatever it is, tapes, money laundering, whatever it is. But no, we are not going to do anything strong on Russia. When is it going to get through your thick head that I am corrupt?
I'm dying to chime in. I have so many things to chime in on. So first of all, I want to mention this caveat before I get into my commentary, because Nikki Haley's foreign policy is not something that I'm supportive of. She's incredibly hawkish. She is in favor of, doing these sanctions because, look, she believes in the sanctions, but she always wants to take a much more aggressive approach than we need to when it comes to foreign policy. So overall, I don't necessarily agree with her. However, when it comes to how this all unfolded publicly, she is not in the wrong. She was not advised that they had decided to switch gears. And I'll give you some statements from actual White House officials that spoke to the New York Times. According to several officials, the White House did not inform Ms. Haley that it had changed course on sanctions, leaving her to hang out alone. And so this keeps happening over and over again in the Trump administration. And standard protocol is, well, the person who wasn't informed and unfortunately made these statements publicly should now be smeared or should be criticized or should be put down in some way. And so that's when Kudlow gets involved and says she must have gotten confused. I'm paraphrasing. And I love that she wasn't gonna have it. She's like, no, I'm not gonna follow protocol. I don't get confused. Here's what really happened. And so I appreciate the way that she handled that, even if overall, when it comes to foreign policy, I don't necessarily agree with her. Now, with that said, Cenk alluded to Trump's reaction after watching Haley on television and what she had to say about these sanctions. And the Times is reporting that this happened. Let's go to graphic 8. Trump saw Haley on television sharply criticizing Russia over its intervention in Ukraine. Who wrote that for her? Trump yelled angrily at the screen, and apparently he repeated again, who wrote that for her?
So let me be clear. These are two different instances, same reaction in both instances. When she's on Face the Nation and talking about Russia over the weekend, he gets angry and yells at the TV. Earlier in the administration, when she had gone and criticized Russia about their intervention in Ukraine, same exact reaction, super angry, yelling at the screen, etc. That goes to the point I was making earlier. People who work for Trump, when are you going to realize he doesn't want to do anything about Russia? And for some on the right and the left who think, no, Trump has deeply held principles and a governing philosophy. Anyway, you think that, God bless your heart. Okay, then he has a governing philosophy that we should be at peace with Russia, and sanctions and bombing and all these different things are going to upset that governing philosophy, or he's compromised. But either way, it's clear that he feels very, very strongly that we should be soft on Russia. And by the way, again, on policy, I'm about to agree with him on some parts. So
we need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of On the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, "You must unlearn what you have learned." And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
But no, the military-industrial complex, the neoconservatives. Here, I'll get to my agreement right now. Nikki Haley's a neocon, and as Ro Khanna pointed out, she's a parrot of Lindsey Graham and John McCain, and as her job is to drive us into war. So no, I vote no. I'm totally against that. No matter why Trump wants to be very, very friendly to Russia, I don't want him to be very friendly to Russia. I believe some of the sanctions might make sense. But in terms of the bombing or driving us more into military conflict in Syria, no way. I'm with Trump on that. That no, we should tap the brakes and we should not just bulldoze into war as the neocons like Nikki Haley want. So on the miscommunication, the clownishness, all of that, Trump is wrong. On the policy, Nikki Haley is way more wrong.
Yes, overall I agree with that assessment. However, I do love just the way she's handling herself in the position that she's in. Because remember, Trump is surrounded by yes men, right? I think of Jeff Sessions and how incredibly humiliated he became after Trump has criticized him time and time again on social media. And he's like, oh, I'll do anything for you, Trump. Just please like me. So he's surrounded by these yes men. And then you have this woman, Nikki Haley, who's like, I'm going to push back. Now, I'll give you an example. The New York Times reported that Trump has grown exasperated by her outspokenness. He doesn't like it.
Oh, yeah, that's shocking.
He don't like that. Oh, is it bothering you? Okay, and then another thing, there are whispers, rumors within the White House involving Mike Pence and Nikki Haley and how they might join forces to challenge Trump in 2020. Oh, I hate both of them. I hate both of them. But I love that drama. It's so good. It's so good.
Et tu, Haley. So earlier on, there were reports that Nikki Haley and Donald Trump were getting along famously. I never believed those reports. Because Nikki Haley was not in the Trump camp to begin with during the primaries. She is way more establishment than Donald Trump, and she has high ambitions. None of these are going to be a good match for Donald Trump. So I was just waiting for this to blow up, and now it has. So when Trump hears her being tough against Vladimir Putin, he's like, well, you don't know what I know, shut up, right? Point one point. Then he hears, wait, let me get this right. Rumors of Pence and Haley, not in 2024, in 2020 when I would be running for re-election. Oh, no, she didn't. So here comes orange-faced, fuming volcano Trump.
Yep.
So now the clock has begun on Nikki Haley's tenure at the Trump administration. Tick, 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 tick. She could be gone in the Nikki of time.
You're the worst.
Agreed.
Let's just pretend like that didn't happen.
Wish I interrupted you sooner. Maybe I'm missing something because we're talking sanctions. I don't think she's talking about okay, so the policy now being because of what happened, whatever chemical attack happened in Syria, we're going to launch more bombs, and then Trump is against that because obviously he's for that. He did it. I mean, of course, it's just a cursory thing to make it look like he's a tough guy when I'm not really sure that all happened. But we're talking about sanctions that Trump isn't, I thought, sanctions that Trump isn't implementing from the beginning, things that Congress already voted on, bipartisan way voted on to implement on Russia based off things they've been doing in general from beginning to end. So that's what he disagrees with her on, and I'm not sure if we agree with that. I mean, you guys can.
No.
I don't agree with him on allowing that stuff to just slide.
No, so JR makes a great point, and thank you because I need to clarify about that. I'm against Nikki Haley's generally hawkish views and neocon views and her calls for more bombing, et cetera, right? But on this specific issue, that clarification is so important because this was about sanctions going towards oligarchs who had business dealings with Syria's chemical weapons program. Now that should be fairly unobjectionable, even for guys like me who don't want any escalation with Syria or Russia. So number one, on that particular issue, you're right, JR, I'm on Haley rather than Trump's side. Macro issues where she wants to keep pushing more towards conflict, I'm against her and more with Trump. But more important than that is why Trump blows up over this, but not the bombing.
Yes.
Okay, why? Because this touches Russian financial interests. And so that actually hurts the oligarchs who he is in bed with. And so that's why he can't have it. The bombing, some people die, whatever. A lot of people are dying in Syria. As long as you don't hit the Russians, I think we're gonna be okay, and that makes me look tough. But if my friends in Russia have their bank accounts frozen, they are not going to be happy about that. That's why he flipped out over this.
Right, and so there's also one other comment I want to quickly make, and it's about, just the optics of everything that's going on right now. I mean, you say you agree a little more with Trump's strategy or foreign policy. But remember, the biggest issue here is that Trump doesn't have a strategy or a foreign policy. And so, the international, to other countries, right, to our allies, to other players, they look at what's going on right now. And how is anyone going to take the White House at its word? How is anyone going to expect any type of stability when you have a president who doesn't even know what he's doing? He changes his mind day to day, especially on big issues like Syria. I mean, 2 Fridays ago, we're doing a story about how he wants to pull out as soon as possible, take the troops out as soon as possible. And the following Friday, he's dropping bombs and he's getting more involved. And so he's just kind of doing this day by day and changing his mind. And while Nikki Haley is making statements that the White House has already reneged on, think about how that looks to other countries.
So that's a great point. One last point of clarification. You're absolutely right. Trump does not have a strategy. He does not have a policy. He doesn't have a policy on anything. So I agree with the result of his instinct of, for whatever reason, I don't want to get mired in Syria. That's what I agree with. I don't want to push into Syria, and I don't want to push towards more war. Now, having said that, the mixed messages we're sending to the rest of the world is insanity, because they're just sitting back going, wait, how do I react?
Right.
Because whenever any Trump administration official says something, I have to wait. I have to wait until Trump tweets about it. Is it true or not true? Because this guy's a total freaking clown. So he doesn't even communicate to his own UN ambassador. He had to tell Rex Tillerson to stop negotiations with North Korea, which he then later restarted and bragged about after firing Rex Tillerson. So nobody has any idea what the hell's going on, because Trump doesn't have any idea what's going on. To Anna's point, not only is he changing the stance that his officials are saying, he often changes his own stance.
That's right.
So the whole world is just waiting, like, at the edge of their seat, like, what in the world's going to happen next?
Exactly. And when we did that original story about Syria and how Trump wanted to pull the troops out of the country, we agreed with him. We agreed with him on that, and we loved that he was standing up to the generals that were advising him otherwise. And then again, a week later, he decides to get involved, further involved by going after Assad and chemical weapons. So again, don't get too excited by any foreign policy that he seems to support, because he will change his mind the next week.
Agreed on that. What's next?
All right. Mike Pompeo, the head of the CIA and Trump's pick or nominee to be his Secretary of State, has apparently visited North Korea and spoken to officials there. Now, it's unclear if there is any real result from that meeting, but Trump, of course, is bragging about it, and in the middle of doing so, tweeted something that was inaccurate. So let's read his tweet, and I'll tell you what is inaccurate. Mike Pompeo met with Kim Jong-un in North Korea last week. Meeting went very smoothly and a good relationship was formed. Details of summit are being worked out now. Denuclearization will be a great thing for world, but also for North Korea. Okay, so the part of that tweet that was not correct had to do with the timing. So according to White House officials who spoke with the Washington Post, Pompeo actually met with the North Korean dictator over Easter weekend. That was more than 2 weeks ago. People are giving him a hard time about that mistake. But I got to be honest with you, when you look at Trump as a whole and all the other things he's tweeted in the past, this is a small error.
Yeah, it's unsurprising that he had no idea when the meeting happened. He doesn't do his homework, et cetera. But we've been through that. Yes, in the Trump world, this is a tiny error compared to the gigantic mistakes he normally makes, including in this case. To me, the much more interesting part was him blurting out that we're having very high-level meetings.
Yeah, that was the part I was about to get to. So reporters were trying to dig around and ask about this meeting because yesterday Trump had bragged about how there are meetings happening with North Korean officials at very high levels. And so, of course, that's vague and people wanted to know what's going on. And when reporters would ask, they were basically told, we don't discuss the CIA and the director's travel.
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
And then Trump tweets this today and essentially goes against what what other White House officials had told the media. So these are all things to take into consideration. Again, yet another example of Trump going back and forth on certain things, the White House going back and forth on certain things.
Yeah, no, the guy's such a child. I grow tired of saying it, but you can't normalize how stupid he is. So all of the adults go, okay, now on an issue, look, and by the way, on the substance of this, in terms of North Korea negotiations with South Korea, I love it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm not against Trump's policy, and such as it is for today, okay? But you got to call it like it is. So Trump, all the adults go, hey, now this is delicate. We want to execute this policy in a correct way so that we can actually get to peace. So please don't tell people that the head of our CIA and the guy you nominated to be our Secretary of State is going and has personally met with Kim Jong-un. Don't even talk about how he's like, oh, okay, got it. Not talking about it. Goes in front of the press. Oh, you won't believe what I know. Oh, Jesus Christ. It's very high levels. I can't tell you, but very, very high levels. What did you think people were going to do? They're going to ask, what high levels? What are you talking about? And then the next morning, they're like, they put out statements. The White House puts out statements. No. There's, these rumors are not exactly right, and blah blah blah. And then the next morning, he's like, "Oh, I got a great idea. I'm going to do a tweet. It was Mike Pompeo, and he met with Kim Jong-un." Even when he's right, he finds a way to screw it up so royally.
Right, and again, even when he's right, don't get too excited because you don't know how long he's going to remain on the right side of the issue. Now, Look, I am happy that the approach toward North Korea has changed considerably, because not too long ago, Trump was tweeting out things toward Kim Jong-un, making fun of his physical appearance, talking about how his nuclear button is bigger than Kim Jong-un's nuclear button, just embarrassing the country as he does. But what he's saying now is good in a diplomatic sense, but he now also kind of comes off as incredibly naive. And this is following the meeting with Pompeo. So I want to read you a quote from Donald Trump. He said, "I believe there's a lot of goodwill. They do respect us," meaning North Korea. "We are respectful of them."
Okay. He called Kim Jong-un Rocket Man before. He said that that was the famous line about how we're going to have fire and fury and use power like the likes of which the world has never seen before. He basically threatened to nuke them before. He called the government of North Korea cruel and barbaric, which is true, by the way, right? Now he's like, oh, they said some nice things about me. They respect me, so I show a little respect back, okay? Oh, we're led by a total imbecile.
He is the easiest person to manipulate when you really think about it. Because all you need to do, if you want to manipulate him and you want to get something out of him, is just compliment him.
That's
right?
it.
Just
that
say
simple.
Positive things about him. Say that you support him. Never try to cross him. Never give the appearance that you have ambitions to replace him. You'll be fine. You'll get what you want. In fact, the leader of Japan is, kind of doing this balancing act right now, because he wants to ensure that these tariffs that Trump is imposing on, other countries that do trade with us don't affect his country. He doesn't want Japan to be impacted. And so, he's having all these calls and these meetings with him, even though it might not be politically savvy to do so, considering how the US is approaching North Korea right now.
So, okay, more context on that.
Yeah.
Every part of this is amazing. So, Prime Minister Abe goes to Mar-a-Lago, spends 2 days with Donald Trump. Trump, in the middle of it, announces that Pompeo is going to meet personally with Kim Jong-un. The government of Japan is not in favor of that.
Right.
So Abe's like, what? You guys are meeting with the North Koreans? Okay, no, yeah, of course everything's going to be fine. He's like, what are you going to do with this guy? But he needs to make sure that they are not included in the sanctions. Mm-hmm. So he has to sit there and kiss Donald Trump's ass. It's so humiliating. And so he goes out and he's like, oh, Mr. Trump, Donald, you have been fantastic. It is your great courage and leadership that has brought this to a good situation that we're in now. Oh, somebody help me, right? So, because they all have to appease the man-child, otherwise he's going to do something stupid and break all the furniture. So, I want to go back to one other quote from Trump on North Korea. And then get to what should we actually do. Earlier, he had said, without us and without me in particular, I guess you would have to say that you wouldn't be discussing anything, including the Olympics, which would have been a failure. So he's saying that North and South Korea, which are now discussing a peace treaty, so it's right now they're in an armistice, so the war never technically ended. Trump, of course, said nobody knows that. Okay, most people don't know that, and it is an interesting fact, but people who are in politics know it, people who are president of the United States know it, right? But of course, he just found out. He's like, did you know? Nobody knows that the war didn't actually end, it's in an armistice.
Oh,
so they're discussing a peace treaty, that's great news. But what does Trump have to do? Oh, they couldn't have done it without me in particular.
No.
They wouldn't have discussed anything, they wouldn't even have had the Olympics together.
But they did it despite you. Because his rhetoric was so terrifying that leaders in South Korea were like, okay, let's find a way to de-escalate this situation. South Korea had to be the adult in the room and get into direct talks with North Korea. So I guess he's kind of right. Yeah, you're so unhinged and unstable that other world leaders have to basically take a leadership role and in the international, way and reach out to North Korea on their own. I mean, he's crazy, and it's scary when you consider how unstable he is when it comes to these incredibly important issues.
Republicans, it really doesn't bother you that he says things like the Olympics would have been a failure without him? Like, if you had a person like that in your real life who went around bragging about things they had nothing to do with and made grandiose, preposterous statements. Like a guy doesn't come to your wedding and then he goes, "Oh, your wedding would have been a failure without me." You'd be like, "Who are you? You're like the worst person in the world. I brought you and your wife together. You don't even know my wife." The guy's an egomaniac, and you read that stuff and go, "Oh yeah, Olympics failure without Donald Trump." Really? That's what you've succumbed to? That's what you're degraded to? All right, finally on the policy. Look, we've tried this before with North Korea in the 1990s and then recently, both times when Trump said, "So stupid to talk to North Korea. They always renege on deals. Don't talk to them." Now he's going to do something unprecedented and go meet with the North Korean leader. But despite all that, I say yes. So I want North and South Korea to do a peace treaty. And North Korea promises they're going to denuclearize. Do I trust them? Hell no. They have reneged on all the deals. But you know what? I was happy that Bush didn't. In fact, if anybody remembers all the way back then, that was one of the things I used to always give Bush credit for. It was like among two things, right? His amount of money he gave to helping AIDS in Africa, which was really great on Bush, and the fact that he didn't go to war with North Korea and at least tried peace. Because look, if we go to war, we know what happened. Millions of people die. If you keep delaying, there is some chance that we can peaceably remove the dictator in North Korea and that awful government. So I love that South and North Korea are trying to get to some sort of peace deal. If Trump is in favor of that, great, wonderful. No matter how ridiculous he is and how he blunders his way into it, what I'm afraid of is that something's going to go wrong, and instead of kissing his ass, someone is going to accidentally insult him when he goes to meet Kim Jong-un, and then he's going to try to prove he has a bigger button. So these are terrifying times. It could go in a positive direction, and if it does, I'll give him a lot of credit. Or it could go in a disastrous direction, so brace for impact. Thanks for listening to this podcast. You're only halfway through, so hold, stay right here. Just want to remind you, if you want to get all 5 segments of the Young Turks commercial free, these are just 2 of them. Every day we do it. So go to tytnetwork.com/join and you get the whole 5 segments, 2 hours, ad free. Do it now. All right, we are back. Young Turks, Cenk, Anna, and Brett with you guys.
Did you guys vote for the Webby yet? That's all I'm going to say.
That's a good point. tytnetwork.com/tytwebby and tytnetwork.com/breakdownwebby. Breakdown Webby, because Breakdown is up for an award as well, and that's the one that really needs the votes right now.
Yeah.
The voting ends tomorrow. I need you to panic vote today and tomorrow. You couldn't vote multiple times. Photog Mike writes in on YouTube Super Chat, Cardi C for Cenk.
Nice.
We'll try that on.
Some people are mad at me for my negative comments toward that one song. I don't have to like every song, but I like her.
It's not a good song.
Right?
Is my only criticism of it.
It's definitely not a good song for a meditative yoga class.
Yeah.
It's more of a mantra, though, because it's the same thing over and over again. Maybe that's what they were tapping into.
Maybe.
So I actually have a new nickname which you guys accidentally started this morning, but you don't even know it. But I'll talk about it in the postgame. Oh, it's fun. It's fun. Okay, literally. John Powell writes in on YouTube Super Chat. Bernie, Tina Turner. I'm pretty sure you meant Nina Turner, but that's still fun.
Yes, that was such a good tweet.
Okay. Anna Kasparian, Vice 2020. So I'm having a little trouble deciphering the tweet.
Yeah,
but I think
I love it. I love all of it.
Yeah, I think that he's saying that you and Nina and Bernie should run together somehow in 2020.
Yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah, I hear you. Disney Princess writes in. I know, it's funny every time.
Wait, I thought you misspoke.
Stop it.
Yeah,
right now.
I've read her tweets a million times. Yeah.
Oh, I missed this. I probably wasn't close enough.
She says Cardi B featuring Bernie Sanders. That's the hottest track of the summer.
It is.
That would be badass. You should definitely do it. Oh, I love this one. Historically speaking, it says big teacher protests at the major intersection outside my work right now in Peoria, Arizona, right here in Arizona District 8. Speaking of which, that special election is coming up on Tuesday. That's the district Trump won by 21 points. Last poll has a Democrat winning by a point. So Justice Democrat lost that race in the primary. She's now helping the other Democrat in the race. That's real unity. And that Democrat could win, but you got to go out there and vote. So if you're in Arizona, make sure you find out about that special election. And everybody can find out how to vote at tytnetwork.com/register, no matter where you are. Last tweet is Control Left says, have Dan Rather on Old School sometime. That'd be freaking epic. It would. We also know Larry King. We go on his show every once in a while. Could you imagine if we did an Old School, me, Ben, Dan Rather, Larry King?
That's definitely old school.
Wow.
Okay.
The first school.
The first school. All right, Anna, what's next?
Okay. The state of Tennessee recently sold 2 public parks to nonprofit organizations. In fact, the city council in Memphis specifically voted in favor of selling these public parks to nonprofits. Now, as soon as the sale happened, the nonprofits decided that they wanted to do away with the Confederate statues at these parks. But lawmakers in the state of Tennessee were not having it and have actually retaliated against Memphis. Let me give you the story. Lawmakers voted to take $250,000 away from the city of Memphis after its decision to take down Confederate statues. Now, again, let me be clear. The city did not make that decision. The nonprofit organizations that purchased the public parks made that decision. But nonetheless, the Republican-dominated state House decided to take away the money, which was meant to be used next year for a bicentennial celebration, by passing an amendment attached to the House Appropriations Bill. Representative Andy Holt from Tennessee was quoted as saying, "Today is a demonstration that bad actions have bad consequences. And my only regret about this is it's not in the tune of millions of dollars."
So let's go over this. Bad actions have bad consequences. So the 2 statues they're taking down are of Confederate President Jefferson Davis and Confederate General Nathan Bedford Forrest. Now, the president of the Confederacy, well, you know what he did. He led a revolution against a country called America. All right, but you might not know much about Nathan Bedford Forrest. So he's a complicated character, and if you're studying him in history books, you'll find out that he had an interesting arc in his life. He was considered one of the best generals in the South or the North, and even General William Tecumseh Sherman from the North said he was probably the most remarkable man our Civil War produced on either side. He came in as an enlisted soldier and became one of the top generals, like I said. He didn't have an education, but got to that point. Later on, at the end of his life, he renounced some of his previous thoughts, and this was a big deal at the time, received flowers from a black girl in the South. Like that was, whoa, she's dirty, how can you receive flowers from her? Okay, now, let me tell you the reason why you shouldn't have a statue of him. He was the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. And not only did he fight for the Confederacy, but at the massacre at the Battle of Fort Pillow, after the Northern soldiers surrendered in that particular battle, he took all the black soldiers and executed them. And he took all the white Southern soldiers that had fought with the Union and also executed them. They say, well, it wasn't clear whether he ordered the execution or just watched it because they're black. And you had to teach them a lesson that you cannot rebel. If you do, you're gonna get a bullet in the head, even if you surrendered. And you got a statue of that guy up? Study him in the history books, find out about his complicated history. But I'm not having a statue of the first Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan who executed innocent soldiers from the Union Army, especially because of the color of their race, in the middle of Memphis. And then you tell me bad actions, taking down a statue. That's the bad actions that this deeply racist Republican in Tennessee would like to give bad consequences to. I'm gonna take your money away if you don't celebrate that racist piece of crap who rebelled against the United States of America. So that's the message that Republicans are sending.
Yeah, and bad They made money. They sold property off from state control to private control. So you should be in support of that if you're like a true conservative. Also, there's still so many racist monuments everywhere. Just take a ride down to Nashville and find that one guy just outside Nashville who put up that weird, Google it if you can, weird Nathan Bedford Forrest statue. There's still plenty of them for you to look at. It's a giant, like 15-foot statue where he looks crazy and he's made of like gold and silver shooting a gun in the air. There's plenty of statues for you to go see. This is not one you should be, getting your panties in a twist over.
I always wonder how many people have allowed their dogs to urinate on these statues, because we know that it happens. And I also wonder, like, how often do the people of Tennessee go to these statues before they were taken down and enjoy them, right? Like, I bet that they're overlooked. No one cares except for maybe the black people that live in the state and have to deal with that type of torment on a regular basis. But, it's funny because as soon as you bring up, hey, we should probably take these down because it's insulting to the black members of our community, that's when people get up in arms and they want to protect the statues.
Just go buy them. Go buy them back if you love them so much. Go make enough money and go buy them back.
And put it in your backyard and celebrate your racism that way. So you know why he eventually left the Klan? Because as they were terrorizing and murdering and lynching blacks across the South, he thought they weren't disciplined enough. So that's the guy you're celebrating. Own up to it. Own up to it. Either you're deeply ignorant and know nothing about history and you should be incredibly ashamed that you're talking about it at all, or just raise your hand and say, I love celebrating terrorists who murdered innocent African Americans and started the Klan. So one last thing, guys, I'm gonna go to graphics 63 and 64 because, again, some of the folks that are right-wing in the South apparently need a history lesson. They're not very bright and they haven't studied very much. So I want to show you the flag that some of them celebrate. This is the flag that the Confederacy used in battle. You're familiar with it, the Confederate flag. That's what they rode into battle waving. On the other side was another army, and they also had a flag. You want to see what that flag looked like as they rode into battle? It looked like this.
I'm really offended that there are certain people in the country that don't respect our flag.
That's right. Those people started a war against America. They're traitors, and in his case, he was a terrorist. You want to have that terrorist statue up there? Yeah, at least we know exactly where you're coming from.
All right, I am going to skip ahead to the story about the dating apps because I just wanted to bring it up.
All right.
There is the emergence of exclusive dating apps that are not open to anyone who wants to join. You have to apply, and oftentimes there's a waiting list. And it specifically matches people who are considered elite, people who have certain schooling, certain careers, certain savings accounts. And there was an interesting perspective taken on these dating apps and how it could further divide the country or at least push for more inequality in the country. Because oftentimes when people, or at least back in the day, when people would find a mate and then get married, it had everything to do with proximity. It had everything to do with who you had access to. And now with online dating, if you are able to pick and choose specific features that a person has, including how much money they have or how successful they are in their careers, well then it's much less likely that someone who doesn't have their career started yet will have a chance at finding love with someone who's a little more established. So I thought that was an interesting perspective, and I wanted to open it up to you guys. But first, just a quick graphic. There's the League. It's among a new crop of these elite dating apps whose business models are predicated on the reality that courtship is partly an economic exercise. The services are facilitating unions between educated, affluent millennials who are clustering in such cities as San Francisco and New York. In fact, a lot of these apps do not operate in areas that are not considered big cities. So
as long as you don't need any personal skills or confidence to approach someone in the real world, in real life, eye to eye, I'm 100% behind all these apps.
Look, there's a bunch of apps that I don't agree with, and they don't really care about my opinion, but that's okay. Lugsy, for example, bills itself as best match and dating service for millionaires. Well, and half of its active members, they claim, earn more than $500,000.
I can't.
I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I'm like, if you should be able to agree with the decision you've made and on who you want to date. And this will hook you up with someone you're fine with. And if you're each fine with each other, go have your snobby little babies. I'm fine with it.
I really want to continue discussing this in our members-only postgame today because I have a lot to say. So if you're a member, please check that out.
tytnetwork.com/join. I also have a ton to say about this because I want to talk about whether it makes sense for people that are looking for a certain education level or certain folks. So we'll pick it back up in the postgame for all the members. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for watching what I hope was a lovely edition of the Young Turks. Now, you know that is 2 of the 5 segments that we do because that's free. We want to have you support independent media and come watch the whole show that we do every day. That's 5 segments overall, no ads at all. That's at tytnetwork.com/join. Come become a member. Thanks for watching either way. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.